The 2022 season for the San Francisco Giants has not exactly gone according to plan, and so we've got a lot of questions about the immediate and long-term future for the San Francisco Giants. And also with the trade deadline upcoming, what is the approach that this team is going to take? Buyers, sellers, both? So we'll get into all of that next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, we're going to dip into some mailbag questions. There were really a lot of great questions today. Not going to be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to save the rest that I don't get to today for a future mailbag. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. First few come from Ricky, Ryan, and Lance. Ricky says, do you feel Farhan is actually going all in on winning a title now? It seems that he's taking a more patient approach like the Dodgers did pre-2019. In my opinion, we won't see more aggressive moves until 2023 or 2024 when the top prospects are up. And then Ryan says, it's well known the Giants will have plenty of payroll next season, yet the cavalry is not on the horizon yet, Luciano, Harrison, etc. Was last year an aberration and the intention was to hold the line till 24, or will they go all in on Judge, Turner, Correa, etc. in 23? And then Lance says, is it time to sell the farm for Soto? So I thought that was actually related to these other two questions. So Ricky's point is one that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's a point that is super valid and I think relevant here. And the idea, I mean, in terms of going all in on winning a title now, I don't think there's any doubt that they want to win now. And I mean, look at last year. I get it that this year has not been the same, but clearly they believe that they can put together a team that can get hot and win a bunch of games. And so, yes, I think they want to win as many games as they can. But also, you make a great point talking about the Dodgers. People say, like, constantly we're comparing the Giants to the Dodgers, and this is the Dodgers payroll, and these are the players that the Dodgers have, and the Giants aren't doing that. Well, if you followed the Dodgers closely up until the point when they made these huge acquisitions that they've made recently with Betts, Trea Turner, Freddie Freeman, trading for Max Scherzer, although that was something they frequently did, they were a team built from the ground up 100%. And one of the points that often gets missed in terms of spending is that when you have a good farm system and you churn out star talent out of your minor league system, you want to keep those guys. So those are the guys who end up on your team long term. A lot of the frustration around the Giants people have is like certain players, they're just in and out, like one and done, like maybe, or two and done, like Kevin Gausman or potentially Carlos Rodón, potentially Joc Pederson. But I think always they're going to want the foundation to be their minor league system. And so you're 100% right. We still haven't seen those guys come up. But I think the hope and the plan is that eventually these guys, you've got Marco Luciano, Luis Matos, Kyle Harrison, and others, eventually like coming up every year or so. You've got new potentially star type players coming up through your system. And is it always going to work out? No. But if you look at how the Dodgers became what they became, this was how they did it. Think Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Max Muncy, Justin Turner. Some of these guys like Muncy and Turner were kind of reclamation projects and breakout players who were diamonds in the rough, but I'm sure I'm missing plenty of others too. Will Smith, the catcher. These are guys from their own minor league system, and that is 100% the foundation of the Dodgers' success. So once those guys were up, Then at a certain point, they made some strikes. Like they traded for Mookie Betts, and they had such a good farm system, they felt like they could make a trade for Mookie Betts. They gave up Alex Verdugo, who was kind of an extra piece on that roster, but a lot of teams would have wanted him as a more central part of their roster, and plus another good prospect in that trade. But they also got Brusdar Graterol in that trade. But they get Betts and then they extend him. But there were like 5 years of building that team before they made that move. And then they've made a few others with Trea Turner, the Trea Turner trade, and the signing of Freddie Freeman. But they're 100% built like that. And I think that that is ultimately the plan for the Giants. And in the meantime, they want to put together a competitive roster. But I don't think, regarding the question, is it time to sell the farm for Soto? I don't think so. I don't think that they're in that position yet where they can just like finally have built up a lot of future talent in Luciano, Harrison, etc. And you're just going to give it all up for one player and then have depleted your farm system entirely. I don't think that they want to play that game yet. And when you can spend on these guys. And so I think like the question is, will they though? And I think a lot of you are thinking, no, they won't. But I do believe, like we talked about this the other day, their payroll is at like 70 million if Carlos Rodón opts out after 2022. And currently it's at like 162 million. So that's almost $100 million that they could spend on next year's roster just to get back to the point that they are at this year. And so there are guys, like you could go out there and devote some of this to a star player, and it's not crazy because you're just building your payroll back to almost what it was. Granted, you've got some positions you'd have to fill, multiple positions, but their starting rotation is more stable than it was last year. And so anyway, these are questions for a later date. But I just agree that philosophically, we're kind of missing the point that this is going to be a team that is going to be built from the ground up, and homegrown talent is going to be an essential part of the San Francisco Giants moving forward. Like if we take a 5-10 year look at the Giants, I think the best players to come through, you might have one huge signing or trade acquisition who makes a big difference, but I think the core pieces, they intend to be homegrown. And then the question about, again, I just want to reiterate, the players who are here long term, typically they're your own players because the way that the contract is set up, when you first show up at the major leagues, you get 6 years of, the club has 6 years of control over you. And so you're here for at least 6 seasons. And if you're a star player, that's a big deal. Like look at Logan Webb. He has emerged as one of the better starters in the major leagues, and he's been here a while and he's going to be here a while more. And so imagine having like 4 or 5 or 6 different players of that caliber littered throughout your roster, pitchers and position players. It makes a big difference. And those are the guys you get attached to. Those are the guys you buy the jerseys for. And the intention is certainly to have that, but it just hasn't happened yet. And so, yeah, I don't know that they're going to go all in on Judge Turner, but what I said, like Trea Turner, by the way, is who we're talking about here. What I said about their payroll is that they'll have money to spend. It's just on who do they spend it on. And so we'll take a closer look at that at some point. But for now, we're still focused on the 2022 season. So the next round of questions are going to be all about what the Giants are going to do at the upcoming trade deadline, which is literally a month and a day away. So we'll talk about those questions in just a second. But first, betonline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs, which are over. Hopefully you bet on the Colorado Avalanche. And also there's tons of Major League Baseball action, of course. Playoff odds, I think perhaps you could buy a little bit low on the Giants right now. You can look at the Cy Young frontrunners. I think you maybe missed your opportunity with Carlos Rodón if you didn't do it yet. But BetOnline is just your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as promised, we're going to talk trade deadline. The next question comes from Edgar, who says, wouldn't it be wise to trade Rodon, Joc, and Belt at the deadline since this team isn't winning anything and those players won't be re-signed next season? A little bit of a pessimistic viewpoint from Edgar. Ricky says, if the Giants continue playing around 500 baseball, do you think it's more likely they sell pieces like Belt, Rodon, etc., or buy in an attempt to improve the team? And Wim Lincecum, I think, says, will the Giants buy, sell, or stand pat at the trade deadline? So unfortunately, the kind of boring answer is that it depends on how the next month goes, and they don't really have to make these calls now. And so, if you have a disastrous month and you end up below 500, it's much less likely that they buy than it would be if they have a good month. And also, needs can emerge, and things you thought were needs can disappear. Like maybe Kasabian wins just go on a tear and you're not so concerned about the catcher position. Or maybe Brandon Belt just catches fire like he's very capable of doing, and you're less concerned about the first base position, and you certainly aren't thinking about trading him if he's also helping you win a bunch of games. So that's the boring kind of answer, is that it depends, and we're going to have to wait. But also the question, just to say, wouldn't it be wise to trade Rodon, Joc, and Belt? It depends on what they're doing. And you say, since this team isn't winning anything, I just don't think that we can definitively say that. I'm sure most people listening would agree. Look, teams don't look good when they're playing poorly. And so, yeah, the Giants are 3-7 in their last 10. I don't think there's any team that's worse in the last 10 days. So, yeah, it's going to not look good when they're going out there and playing like that. But let's say the trade deadline was tomorrow, and would it be wise to trade Rodon, Joc, and Belt? I don't think, no. They're one game out of a playoff spot. They're not just going to trade their best pitcher and their best position player, essentially just throw in the white towel and call it a season. They are committed to, they want to make the postseason. There's just no doubt about it. There's increased money that comes with postseason games. And the thing about baseball is that any team can get hot at the right time and go on a run. And so I just don't buy the argument that you can sit here on July 1st and tell me for a fact how this season is going to end. Like, if you know so well, you should not be writing questions to me. You should be on Bet Online, betting on the future of how this season is going to play out for the Giants and who's going to win the World Series. Because a lot of people come at me saying that they know for a fact who's going to win, that the Giants are not going to win the World Series. First of all, it's not a hot take, because even the top team, whoever that might be, you want to call it the Dodgers? Okay, go bet on the Dodgers to win the World Series and come at me when you've lost, because it's just very, very hard to predict. And the best team doesn't often win. Even the team with the highest odds of winning the World Series might be at about 15% right now. So take the field, right? 85% chance it's not that top team who ends up winning the World Series. And look no further than the Braves last year. The Braves were counted out, left for dead. They struggled to get over 500, and I've had people respond to me when I mentioned the Braves that they have stars, and that is the difference between them and the Giants. Well, maybe, but do you remember that Ronald Acuna Jr. blew out his ACL in July? And so once they were a below 500 team and they lost their best player to a season-ending injury, and yet that team went on to win the World Series. And how did they do it? They made some minor trades for like Eddie Rosario, a struggling Joc Pederson, and Jorge Soler. These are not star players. Joc Pederson, I think, is the best of the three, but he wasn't having a good year last year. And they kind of gelled and meshed, and they went on a run and they won the World Series. But they were not the favorites by any means. So anyway, the Giants believe that if they can just squeak in, then they have as good of a shot as, well, maybe not as good of a shot, but they have a shot. And with Rodon and Webb perhaps pitching very well at the time, that can lead you places. And so I don't think if the trade deadline was tomorrow, no, I don't think it's smart to trade away your best players. And Belt can't be traded without his consent. And he also has no value right now because he's not playing well. And so it depends, but he's not going to go anywhere because he can say no, and I don't see any reason why he would want to go somewhere unless he just really wanted another playoff run and the Giants weren't looking like a playoff team. But that being said, if it's a month from now and they do struggle in July, then I could see them doing some hybrid moves where there's some selling and also some buying. Maybe buying for more of the long term, maybe a player with a lot of club control, a young player who can help them out maybe in the short term, but they're selling someone perhaps like Joc Pederson who could have a lot of value. Rodon definitely could have a lot of value. So it's possible, but it just depends on how the next month goes. So JQ says, what's a realistic goal for the Giants? What is a realistic goal the Giants should set for July? And so I went through the schedule. I looked at all their series, and what I came up with was 15-12 or 14-13. So there's some tough parts of the schedule in July, but there are also some teams you should on paper beat. They finally see the Diamondbacks. They play the Diamondbacks 9 times in the month of July. They have not faced the Diamondbacks yet this season, which is very unusual. So over a third of their games, or no, exactly a third of their games are against the Arizona Diamondbacks in the month of July. And so that helps. You've also got the Cubs, who are not a good team currently, and you've got the White Sox right now, and I'm kind of 50-50 on the White Sox. I think that they have talent, but they've also underperformed. And then you face the Padres and also the Dodgers in the month. So anyway, it is a month that, generally speaking, looks like you should be able to go at least a little bit over 500. If you go below 500, that's when you start thinking about maybe some hybrid selling type moves. But 15-12 or 14-13. And if you go 15-12, your record is 55-46. If you go 14-13, your record is 54-47. I think I would be pretty happy with 55-46 and a 15-12 month. Obviously, ideally better. You do better than that, but I don't think it's crazy. I went through and I had them losing 3 out of 4 to the Dodgers. Like, I was kind of realistic, and that still had them at 15-12. But then you win 3 out of 4 against the Cubs. Those 4-game series are always tough to predict, and generally I want to split them, but I have them losing 3 out of 4 to LA and winning 3 out of 4 to the Cubs. So I guess that's technically splitting those games. So anyway, coming up in just a second, we're going to talk more about the current team. I've got a lot of people who want to say that this is one of the most boring teams they've ever seen. So we'll address that question in just a minute. All right, as promised, are the San Francisco Giants the most boring team in the major leagues? We've got that question and a related question from Sportsman, who says, why does Farhan believe this roster of redundant role players is championship timber? They have 2 quality starters, less than 5 reliable relievers, and an overrated analytics system that leads to boring baseball. It's becoming unwatchable, in my opinion. Drew says, is there a more boring team in baseball than the Giants? So again, I'm kind of inviting in some negativity here, but I think it's fair, and I do kind of feel some of these feelings myself when I watch the Giants, that they can look like a boring team. And I've said this before when we talked about how the whole kind of mental approach of they don't want to get too high or too low can be boring, right? Because they don't get excited when there's something good that's happening. They kind of just are even keel. And maybe that's good long term, but it can be a little bit boring. You watch some other teams around the league, like the Blue Jays, and for me, this gets back to the first point about the young players. And a lot of these other teams around the league, the most exciting part of their team is the young talent. And you've got guys who are like 21 years old. They're kids and they're having fun out there, and they're more kind of emotional. And the Giants are an older team, and they've got a lot of guys that we've seen for a long time, and it's a little bit stale in a lot of ways. And so I kind of agree that they need to introduce some youth, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not opposed to that. And I think that hopefully in the second half of the season, we do see some younger players come in and maybe perform. That's part of the issue, is that a lot of these younger guys haven't really seized the opportunity, but also it's not their top prospects yet who are arriving. And so I just have to address 2 quality starters. I guess that's true for now, but last year counts. If this year counts, then last year counts. And last year is a bigger body of work. And so I think that DeSclafani and Wood should be able to be at least average pitchers. And so I expect positive regression there. Alex Cobb continues to lead the world in expected numbers, but the actual numbers just haven't been there. But I continue to believe that they will. So I just disagree. I don't think they only have 2 quality starters. Less than 5 reliable relievers. I must say, name me a single team or 5 teams, and I bet you can't, that have more than 5 reliable relievers. It is not common. Bullpens are fickle things, and to say less than 5 reliable relievers, I don't think that's any kind of a dig. That's pretty common. And an overrated analytics system that helped them win 107 games last year. I get it. You're saying it leads to boring baseball, but they won 107 games last year in large part to their overrated analytics system. But I hear you. I want to give you a voice to say that it's becoming unwatchable, but I also will say they're losing a lot. And when you're losing, it looks unwatchable kind of no matter what, I would say. And so if you go off and you win 9 of 10, it's not unwatchable. It's hard to not have fun watching your team win, but they have found a way sometimes. But I must say that I think if you go on a little stretch, you sweep a series, you have some comebacks, you have some big hits, then it's not unwatchable. But if you lose and lose and lose, it stinks to watch. There's no doubt. And they have felt at times particularly boring when they're losing. I'm not disagreeing with that. So last couple of questions are about the starting rotation. Manny says, will the Giants go to a 6-man rotation once Junis is eligible to return from the IL, or will DeSclafani get the boot if he continues to struggle despite signing a 3-year extension? And do you think Sam Long has earned an opportunity to be a starter if Wood doesn't correct himself as well? And then Gabe says, how long is the leash for DeSclafani and Wood? They do not appear to be rotation pieces for competitive teams right now. So I'm just going to back up what I said a minute ago. Yes, they're struggling right now, but they've got a pretty long leash. I mean, they've got track records. DeSclafani, I mean, come on. He's pitched 5 innings since coming off the injured list. His defense did not help him out. He was so good last year. This is complete recency bias. I get it. It's been super ugly this year for him, but we don't just get to say last year completely doesn't count and this year means everything and just kick him out of the rotation. They're going to keep running him out there as long as they can. And guys like Long will continue to pitch. Junis, to me, belongs in there. So I think, yeah, they would either put Junis back in the rotation and have a 6-man rotation, or someone could go on the IL, or maybe DeSclafani pitches out of the pen until he gets right. But I think Junis would slot back in there regardless. And Sam Long, I think that they like him in the role that he's in, but if he keeps pitching well, eventually these things do correct. Like, if these other guys just continue to struggle after struggle, time after time, they'll eventually put in the guys who are pitching well. It will happen, but for now, they're not just going to give up on DeSclafani and Wood, nor do I think they should. But I think Junis and Long should continue to get opportunities and potentially earn being in that starting rotation. We'll see. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name's Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thanks in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Hopefully, can the Giants win a series? Can they take advantage of some Tony La Russa blunders? That's what I want to see. So we'll be back and talking about whatever goes down over the weekend on Monday. So thanks again for listening. Have a great weekend. Stay locked on Giants.